So I'll go ahead and just introduce myself. So I'm Zach Boehm. I'm the Vice President of Innovative Systems at AHS LLC. So I focus on a lot of the innovative technologies. A lot of our partners are here at the show showcasing their technology. And I'll be talking about ROI and how you do that with ramping up your ROI with robotic solutions. So just as an introduction here, really going to focus on achieving ROI with robotic solutions. Pretty straightforward. Who is achieving ROI? Talk a little bit about some of the segments and what they're doing. What is driving the ROI? So kind of go through a couple scenarios that show exactly how we're approaching it. Somewhat high level, because you could get pretty deep into some of these conversations with your customers. Where the company's utilizing robotic solutions that are hitting ROI, that's super important, because as you walk around the show, you're going to see robotics that could pretty much do anything within your facility. And so you need to understand where some are at, some are farther along than others, and where our others are really hitting the ROI analysis they need to in order to be successful. And then why should you consider robotic solutions to help drive your ROI? So let's start super simple. What is ROI? Performance measurement of driving return on investment. It's typically defined in years. The lower, the better, right? You want to get your return on investment in a lower number of years. There's other ways to go about it, but this is about as simple as you can get. Your dollar savings versus the cost of investment equals your ROI. The largest categories for savings are labor reduction, which everybody's looking to do right now, because number one, it's not really reducing labor, it's getting value-added labor into your facility. Cost avoidance, right? So that could be making sure that there's accuracy there, making sure that you don't have to go out and hire new people every other week or every other month to bring them into your operation, and then training them too as well. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go farther into the slides, where a lot of people are seeing an ROI or adding different things to their ROI to hit that. And then increased production, right? If everybody can come to you and say, hey, you could put robotic solutions in, you could run as many hours in the day you want to keep your facility open, then you're going to hit a better ROI. Everybody wants to know and understand what that looks like. And then additional categories of savings are safety. That's one big thing that if you're coming from the manufacturing space, safety is very, very big, and as well as costly in some of those pieces. Turnover costs, I hit that one already a little bit. Space savings, do you understand what the square footage in your facility really costs you? Right? And if you could save that space by utilizing the vertical cube, what is that savings, or what is that cost avoidance you might be looking at? Transportation costs, order accuracy, any more shrinkage. Some people define it in multiple different ways, but that is becoming more and more important. And you could also take and put technologies in that allow you to be more accurate to help drive your ROI. And then process efficiency. So there's just some at a high level that you could definitely look at depending upon what robotic solution and process you're looking at automating. So I'm going to keep it to really to three different general portions of it. So mobile robotics, or what I deem as going to any facility and you see non-value added movement. The easiest way to explain this to people would be take a forklift. If I have to take a pallet out of the rack at 6 foot high, the value of that forklift is taking it out of the rack. The value of that forklift is not driving from one side of the building to the other, right? It's the vertical use of that forklift. And I want to keep that person on that forklift doing that all day long. So that could be pallet movement, cart movement, or other types of material movement. Some people with mobile robotic technology look at disposable waste, trash, those types of things within their facility, things that you really don't account for, but you have to do in order to keep your workplace clean or get different types of dunnage throughout the facility. Where that is areas of focus within your facility, inbound, outbound, replenishment, and just miscellaneous movement, right? If you sit down and think about all the people and you try to categorize your labor, where is there labor that's not quite categorized, but it's valuable to your process, and you need that? And maybe that's a way you could look at mobile robotic technology. Next is person to goods. So we're kind of going through the evolution of different types of technology. So this would be basically driving pickers to locations within a facility to help with the pick process. They're basically attacking the non-value added movement, right? And so instead of pulling a cart through the pick path, I'm going to let a robot drive me through the pick path, or I'm going to bounce from robot to robot in order to do that. There's a lot of good technologies that are out in that space if that is an opportunity for you to drive to that, and we'll look at the ROI for that. And then any other added movement in your picking process. So discrete order picking, batch picking. Discrete order picking is where you're going to really see it. Batch picking, usually, if that's software driven, is a little bit more efficient, and that's why people look at doing that type of picking. Replenishment, that always seems that when people look at manual processes or semi-automatic processes, you kind of always forget replenishment. That's very labor intensive depending upon what that process is. And then returns processing or picking. So this is becoming more and more of a segment that when we look at new facilities or we look at different types of automation, returns processing, if that's a portion of it, there's some technologies that we'll highlight that are really, really good for that. Some are not. And with returns and people buying more on e-com, there's more and more return product that has to be put back into your inventory. And then a lot of people want to pick that first, right, instead of going to the other inventory. And how do you look at doing that with technologies? And then up to goods to person. So driving product to a stationary picker, again, no non-value added movement. A person is standing still, and you're driving that product to them, or goods to person. Helps during the picking process, helps eliminate all non-value added movement within your picking process within a facility. That'll help with discrete order picking, batch picking, replenishment, and again, kind of the same thing as person to goods, but it's only going to amplify and help you be more efficient with the people that you have and really drive a better ROI. So just want to kind of change the view around ROI and robotics. A lot of people talk about driving ROI, and sometimes there's complication to it. Again, I'm going to try to keep it as simple as possible, but go through some different processes. So just review the processes and steps involved. During the review, what are the non-value-added moves that you want to automate? Current rates, current labor costs, and growth details, right? Because a lot of our facilities, we're projecting it out. We're using a forecast. We don't know what gas prices are going to be tomorrow. We don't know what labor prices are going to be tomorrow. So we're trying to capture that, and that's one of the biggest challenges. But you could also use that to your advantage as you look at an ROI. What is your average versus peak timeframes, right? So in e-com, being a big growth sector that we're looking at automating with robotics, you have to take that into account. And there's some technologies out there that have a lot better process and be able to account for that, whether it's a ROS model or whether it's a rental model. Those are really important to understand because you can't base it all off your peak volumes. I know that's when everybody makes their money, typically, in that kind of space. But you need to make sure how you could utilize that technology, robotic technology, more often throughout the year so you could capture more of that ROI. And then how will today's challenges affect tomorrow's growth? That's important, and a lot of people will talk about it, a lot of people will project out, but it's a best guess, right, at the best opportunity you have. So just looking at a couple different ways of how we approach ROI for mobile robotics. So movements are the same, right, but required teammates are reduced, right? Allows teammates to do more value-added tasks. I said non-value-added before, but I want my people that I can keep and that I've valued and trained to do more value-added tasks because that's going to bring me more value as a customer. And safety is important to include. One of the things that we really, really look at very closely with all of our robotic technologies is safety. As I mentioned before, manufacturing, they're much farther along with automated processes, but in warehousing and those types of things, safety is, I don't want to say it's not a priority, but there's a lot of facilities that have multiple people on their safety team that's specifically zooming in on that. So if you can think about making sure that systems that you automate are more safe or forklift traffic or not having the segment, those types of things will really help you also understand and also may allow you to capture that. So here's just kind of a really simple view of a simple ROI process. So you have a pallet rate. My current pallet rate is 50 pallets an hour, and then I'm going to move 50 pallets an hour with mobile robotics. There really isn't a process gain there, right? But I am doing the same amount of product movement within the facility. Right now I have 6 teammates that are doing that. In the future I'm going to have 2 teammates. And a good example would be that maybe somebody loading and somebody unloading. But now I don't have 6 people driving back and forth or pushing carts or moving pallet jacks across the floor. Equipment savings, that could be forklifts, that could be pallet jacks, that could be other types of technology that you're looking at. So I'm going to get a savings over multiple years. And then my turnover cost, right? $10,000 per year. Again, that's just kind of an example that we would use. You don't have to go out and retrain 6 people, right? Or go out and 6 people. We've worked with some companies where they actually plan in a 2 or 3 year period, they might actually return over their entire people and staff number within their facility. So retraining and turnover costs can really help you drive your ROI. And then safety costs. So when you kind of start looking at all these, again, I'm not putting dollar figures, the other types of things of what it actually costs, but these are where you would start. What are your savings every single year? What is the saving on equipment cost, your turnover cost, just different things that you can look at and approach, again, with mobile robotics to help you drive to your ROI. So person to goods, right? So if we kind of look at a couple different things, pick rate savings is a medium, right? So when you look at your picking process within a facility, especially e-com, retail, and you're picking manually right now, maybe you're picking to a cart, what's the next evolution for you? That would be person to goods, right? Driving the person to the goods, not the goods to the person. We'll get to that on the next slide on how we would approach the ROI. So really, that's really a medium savings on your pick rate. Allow for teammates to complete more value-added tasks. Again, we kind of hit that one already. Cost avoidance may be different upon the scenario, right? So that's really important. Again, I'm taking a high-level snapshot of just how we would go about person-to-goods ROI and different things that we look at, but every single solution is going to be slightly different. You all know that when you look at different facilities, different processes within a current facility, there are going to be many, many different scenarios that you might look at that you might have to take into consideration. And accuracy, right? We talked about how accuracy, shrinkage, how can that play into your ROI? So if you go down from on the left side, you've got pick rate, pickers required, cost avoidance, turnover costs, safety, space savings, and accuracy. And you'll see I don't have some details in some, but we'll hit where you could potentially add that in there. It just may be, you might have to dig a little bit deeper, right? You might have to look a little bit closer at some historical data on safety and cost avoidance, those types of things. So currently, right now, as an example, I'm a 50 UPH. With person to goods, I'm going to jump to 200, right? So what does that mean? I'm basically, with the same picker, I'm getting 150 UPH greater than a person today, right? So that's 4. So that is per person, right? So if you look at any process, let's say I have 100 people today, that means that I'm going to be 4 times better, right? Quicker picking with that by investing in person-to-goods technology. So the pickers required, again, 100 to 25 pickers. It's a savings of 75 pickers. In this type of scenario, could be even greater than that, could be less than that. Again, it just depends upon what your units that you're putting out. And then again, pay attention to the average versus peak, and how do you approach that, and then what is your time frame, right? So when we work with customers, a lot of people on the e-com side have a traditional peak, but we're now running into companies that have launches. They have monthly launches. They have summer peaks. Sometimes now with marketing and sales and e-commerce growth, people are creating their own false peaks, right, to help them drive the ROI for their robotics solutions or automation or any type of technology they're looking at, again, to get that justification out throughout the year and increase their unit output. Cost avoidance. I didn't put anything in here for person to goods, but there could be cost avoidance in there. Maybe, damage the rack, those types of things that you might get with forklifts or maybe powered walkies or those types of things that you might be able to approach and quantify, right? Turnover costs. Again, that's going to continue to be a big one. That's a big one that we've really keyed in on and try to understand. Some companies don't track it and some companies do. I remember one time I went into a meeting and they said, we know exactly how much it costs us when we bring a person through the door. We can quantify that. We can put that into our ROI, and here's the number. And so that really, really helps when you start digging deeper into those details to help paint that picture for the customer and show them what type of ROI they might be able to see. Safety. I didn't put a quantifiable thing in here, but again, you could probably, if you dug deep enough, find it, right? So if you have forklifts going through this area or other types of technology, you're going to be more safe with these types of robotics. You could go out and see multiple different brands in this space, and they work very well around people compared to forklifts or other heavy-duty equipment in that process that you might have. Space savings. Really, person to goods is the really brownfield attack approach. It's not really going to save you. In fact, it's going to cost you a little bit more if you try to get the space savings, or maybe you pop up rack in some areas, and then you could get more densely populated pick area for your pickers, right? And you also have to look at velocities and slotting and all that other great stuff. And then in the next slide, I'll talk about goods to person, where you don't have to worry about that as much, right? That's a lot easier to understand and go for. Another big one is accuracy, right? So in this scenario, the customer was around 90% accurate, right, without adding additional processes downstream, which also costs money. but they're going to be up to 98% accurate. So they're going to get an increase. So what you really have to understand is, what are your shrinkage costs per year, right? What is that costing you in order to help quantify that? And if you're tracking that accuracy on the financial side, that should be a number that your accounting team should be able to help you with, because they understand what they're getting charged. So you should be able to take that and understand that and then quantify that in your ROI. Person to goods, right? Or I'm sorry, goods to person. My bad. Goods to person. This is where really the high-end space. This is where your savings are going to be maximized. It allows teammates to complete more value-added tasks, right? You want that person standing there, presenting the product to them, and then picking to maybe 5 orders, maybe 10 orders, maybe 1,000 orders downstream, depending upon what technology you might look at, doing some type of batch and sort solution. Cost avoidance, it may be different upon the scenario, right? We talked about that a little bit, but now we're getting more to something that's more traditional on the goods to person side. You're really trying to help drive that scenario a little bit more. Space savings can be significant, right? So we, AHS, have aligned ourselves with a couple different partners. One of our partners in Exotech, that you could go over to their booth, is utilizing the vertical cube, being very dense in the space that you're doing and understanding what that cost is of that square footage, and then you can plug that right into your ROI analysis, right? And so you want to understand that, especially today, micro-fulfillment as an example, where people understand the exact cost of that building and the square footage and the savings that you could do to drive that maybe to another process or making something else more efficient will definitely allow you to put that in an ROI. And we push our customers to look at that very closely. Safety, I don't have something here, but I can say some of the technologies that are out there, again, Exotech as an example, everything's within in a safety cube, right? Everything's safe. So now you don't have people walking through a pick environment. You don't have people on forklifts doing replenishment or carts or densely populated areas, right? So it's going to be a lot more safe environment for that picker to stand there and pick all day long. Obviously take their shifts and those types of things. So there's definitely some safety approach that you could go there, but it's, again, something you're going to have to dig a little bit deeper on. But if you could get it, can go into your ROI analysis. This was a good one. So space savings, we're looking at 50,000 square feet today. Some of these have been much greater than this, so I'm using this as an example, down to 25,000 square feet, right? We've seen people go to a third or maybe even less of the space that they need. If you have 40-foot clear, and you work with a couple different technologies, and that's really their drive-to factor, you can save a ton of space and take that savings on the square footage and plug that right into your ROI. Again, accuracy, some would even say it might be higher than 98%, and it depends upon your process at the pick station. As an example, you might be able to get really, really close to 100% if you require your pickers to scan every single unit. But it becomes a trade-off, right? Speed versus accuracy. And it also depends upon your process downstream. As an example, maybe you're doing a batch and sort solution, you're going to scan the unit again. So it's okay to focus on speed at the goods to person, right? Because you're going to scan it again, you're going to make sure it goes to the right order. So again, accuracy could be even higher. I was just using this as an example from a manual pick process to an automated pick process using goods to person. So just kind of going through in a summary, achieving ROI with robotic solutions. I showed you 3 different robotic solutions. Mobile robotics, as I say, take me into any facility. I'll probably point out processes that are non-value added, right? And that you might be able to take that person on a forklift, pushing around a cart, pulling a pallet jack, those types of things, and make them more efficient. It's in every facility. It honestly is. That could be manufacturing to fulfillment to any type of facility you might have where you have multiple people with product movement, which is most of the facilities in this space. Who is achieving ROI, right? So there's a lot of big brands that are out there that are investing in mobile robotic technology. It is on more of the leading edge. If you were at Modex 2 years ago, there was probably, 4 AMRs or autonomous mobile robot companies here, maybe 5. I think yesterday, just walking through the show, I probably counted up to 20 that were truly autonomous, that are forklifts or like mobile industrial robots or other types of technologies. The other people that are achieving ROI, again, in the pick process, utilizing person to goods, goods to person, that's usually the biggest attack. But reverse logistics is a huge one. So If you had an opportunity to walk past the Exotech booth yesterday, we're actually interviewing Gap. They have invested in a system for Exotech where they're actually using it for reverse logistics. So they bring their product in, make that available in their inventory, but they need the reactivity of that technology in order to drive that to their process. And that's one of the ways that they are utilizing technology, mobile robotic technology, goods to person, in order to drive that ROI. So I would say almost every big brand in that space is doing that. One of the other ones are any of the 3PLs, right? So they have a ton of opportunity in brownfield space. They go out and they get the product, and then, just 2 years ago it was, well, we'll put in a manual process and we'll go out and get the people to run that. Well, now, today, people are not readily available. It's difficult. You got to bring them in. You got to train them on the process. Or maybe you have 20 different processes within your facility. They are now looking at mobile robotic technology. They're now looking at goods to person. And some are investing without clients. Some are putting the technology in and putting everything in the goods to person system because that's one process that they have to train people on in order to drive to that. So that's just one way, a couple ways, that people are looking at achieving ROI, and that's who's achieving ROI in some of that process. What is driving it, right? It's really people, right, and the availability of people. But you've seen a couple different things on there. Square footage, accuracy, that's really driving it. Shrinkage, right? The challenges that are causing people to lose money in their process. And some really, it's funny, we talked to customers about ROI, and I just had a conversation with one of them the other day, and he said, what is ROI? ROI to us is losing our market share, right? So we don't look at a year-over-year ROI. We are going after a certain market share, whether we're trying to grow that market share or we're trying to keep that market share. That's their ROI. That's why they're investing in technology. Those are the companies, as an integrator, you want to work with, right? Those are the companies that are really investing in automation, willing to be the first or some of the first people to bring that to the market and to help them continue to grow that market space for them. So that's just one of the interesting things that just kind of came up in conversation with one of our customers the other day. Where a company utilizing robotic solutions, as I mentioned, a lot of inbound and outbound processes. You're seeing people that are now automatically unloading trucks with mobile robotics, right? You're seeing people automatically load trucks with mobile robotics. Excuse me. Picking is a big one. We already hit that quite a bit. Replenishment, again, when you look at your process and you're looking at the picking, which is going to be your biggest labor portion, but when you look at your replenishment process, when is that happening? Is that happening simultaneously? Because you really need to pay close attention to that. Because if that is happening in the same space at the same time, those people likely aren't going to be as efficient as what you think they're going to be, right? Because they're in that shared space. So again, those are different areas that people are looking at automating replenishment as well as doing the picking. And if you work with an integrator or if you work with an OEM, if they're asking the right questions, they'll want to understand that, right? They may challenge you to look at different ways to do it, to look at maybe doing it more efficiently or putting it on a certain amount of hours. But if they're not asking that question and they're only focusing on picking, you might be working with the wrong people. So you want to make sure you understand that and you're working with integrators or technology partners that really are looking at the entire scope and then the inbound and outbound to that. There's a lot of great technology, like Berkshire Grey as an example. They're looking at different ways they can do consolidation. They're looking at different ways they can do packaging. And those are different automated pieces that, again, go around what we call the anchor of the goods to person, but affect the inbound and the outbound of that technology. And you want to make sure you look at those types of robotic solutions. So, again, why should you consider robotic solutions to drive your ROI? Well, conveyor, sortation, racking, they've all been out there, right? That juice has been squeezed pretty hard, right? So that is an automated process, but it's still going to be heavily reliant on people to feed and take away from that conveyor and sortation. So what's the next step within your fulfillment process, right? You want to make sure that you look at robotic solutions that are flexible, that are scalable, and you want to make sure that you're investing in a technology that's here today, but also you can grow with in the future. There are a lot of companies that we're working with where they're looking at a rollout plan for their entire network. How can I take this and determine at this facility this process and automate it with mobile robotic technology or robotic technology and then take it and roll it across my other 20 facilities, right? They're all going to be slightly different or different processes, but you want a flexible technology to do that. The other part that we talked about at the beginning was average to peak, or your forecasting. I always say everybody's forecast, don't worry, it's wrong, right? And it really truly is, unless you have perfect forecasting, but I haven't quite seen it yet. But you want something that can be very adaptable to that. And that's one of the things that AHS has done is we've went out and looked at the entire market. And we partnered with companies that allow us to do that on the goods-to-person space, the mobile robotic space. You don't want to put something in and then, well, now I'm going to have another 12 to 18 months to put it in again, right? So I want to add to it. I might add to it every single year, or I might add to it every other year. Or I want to rent robots, right? You want to have that capability and flexibility, so you almost want to walk through every scenario you absolutely can to help you drive through that, and then ultimately plays into your ROI piece too as well. Because let's say your forecast is wrong, and now instead of doing 2.5 times, I'm doing 3.5 times. But if I have the right robotic technology that's flexible for that, I can continue to drive that into my ROI. And then when you sit down and you talk to your financial people and they ask you, how are you going to handle your forecast changes? How are you going to handle your order profile changing? You want to be able to answer those questions. And that might actually help you put another little factor into your ROI and drive that. You want drive those years down, right? Allow yourself to be more flexible and ultimately hit the payback that you're looking for. So it seems like every presentation I've done over the last 2 days ends up finishing a little early. So what I like to do is just open it up to questions and see if there are any questions that you might have. This is my contact information. Please feel free to come up after the presentation, send me email. We do have multiple booths at the show. There's the AHS booth, which is B9204, where there's also the high-tech booth too as well. And would love to talk to you more about different robotic technologies and who we're working with and how we're handling it and how we're really driving their ROI. But again, I'll open it up. Does anybody have any questions? Don't all jump at once. Yeah, that's a good question. So we do work with a lot of companies that track it, and we do work with a lot of companies that don't track it, right? First is asking the question, right? And once you ask that question, they start thinking about it, and they start looking about it. One of the things that we look at is, how many people do you have in your HR department, right, at your facility? What is your process? What is your typical on-ramping time of training that you have with people? Those types of things. And then you could start kind of quantifying it and asking the right questions to get to that. I use 10,000 as an example. Sometimes that's low, sometimes that's high. But if you think about a facility that might have 150 to 200 people and they're turning people over that fast, but I would say a lot of people that we've worked with, they kind of already understand the number is. Sometimes you have to help them get there to quantify it. But that's a good question, and it's been really all over the board. It just depends upon who we're working with. But usually when you ask the question, people are already excited to talk to you more, because you're at least thinking that way. You're helping them look at things different. You're challenging the way they're looking at ROI. Good question. Any other questions? Ooh. Okay. No? Okay, well, perfect. Finished up a little early. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Please stop by our booth. Let us know if you have any more questions, want to learn any more about the robotic technologies that we outlined. Thank you very much.